The war in Europe was over. During this time after the war, the Americans and Soviets had taken several German scientists who were the best of their time and used them for something that would start a brand new age in history. The most well-known of these German scientists was Wernher von Braun, which was totally not a Nazi. He was taken by the United States military to conduct testing on rocketry. Along with German scientists, they also took the German V-2 rocket to see how it worked, basically. It was basically a missile, but it was also technically a rocket at the same time. After only a few years of testing, the Russians launched the first artificial satellite into space. Its name was Sputnik 1, and it did absolutely nothing except make a very loud beeping noise on a certain frequency. The Americans then fought back by launching Explorer 1 on the U.S. Navy Vanguard rocket. Unfortunately, the first launch exploded on the launch pad, as you can see right here. On the second try, they did successfully make it orbit, making it the first American satellite to ever reach orbit. The Soviets did something that everyone thought was almost impossible. Yuri Gagarin would become the first person to ever touch the boundaries of what we call space. Yuri would orbit the Earth for several days and eventually return safely to the Earth. It is entirely possible that Yuri Gagarin was not the first man in space due to the fact that the Soviet Union was very secretive about if anyone died during their space agency. Only a couple of months later, the United States would launch a Mercury Redstone rocket with a man by the name Alan Shepard on board. This rocket was a suborbital rocket, meaning it could not reach orbit. If they had gone a month or two earlier, Alan Shepard would have been the first man in space. However, he wasn't. The Soviets were in the lead in the space race. They sent probes to Mars, Venus, everywhere almost. It seemed that they were going to win the space race. However, President John F. Kennedy set a new stake for the race. In this speech, the most famous line would be, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because it is easy, but because it is hard." John F. Kennedy planned by the end of the decade that we would put a man on the moon and return him safely home. The Soviets would respond to this by building the N-1 moon rocket. However, it never got a few hundred meters off the launch pad as it exploded every single time. But you know what didn't explode? The mighty Saturn V, one of the most powerful rockets ever created on this planet. The year was 1969, and it looked that the Americans may not make it to the moon in time of John F. Kennedy's speech. However, 3 men by the name of Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins would set foot on the moon. Besides Michael Collins, he stayed in orbit. This would be a revolutionary moment in human history, as they would soon become a multiplanetary species. Once Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon, he said,
"Small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
The space race was over. We had set foot on the moon and would do it several times over a period of 3 years. I hope you enjoyed this video. I used all the knowledge from no Google that I already knew, so I apologize if some of it's wrong. Hope you have a good day. Goodbye.